Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. This is the price variance, and we got a very special show. Like always, we always have a special show. It's always a special show when it's the price
Always
variance.
special.
This one, we're actually going to talk about something that's probably that we can all relate to, and that is the current market. What is going on with the current market? Are we in a recession? And that is a question that we're going to discuss, and we're going to relate it to comics. And let's get started, Mark. What do you think? Are we in a recession?
Well, I think the world is potentially entering into a time of economic turmoil. I think we've had COVID, which has put some pressures on the world economy. We've got the war in Ukraine, which is causing severe issues in terms of food supplies, because the grain basket of Europe has been switched off. The fuel supply from Russia into the rest of Europe is being closed down. That's putting economic pressures on the whole of the European area. So, there's a whole load of pressures. We've got, ongoing environmental pressures. So I think there are a number of things here that are causing inflationary pressures across the globe. Inflation in the UK, I think, has gone above 15% for the first time since the 70s. So yes, and you can see a large amount of volatility in the stock market, if you watch the stock market at all. So yes, I think on a global economic level that yes, we are going to be entering into a recessionary period. How long that's going to last, I don't know, but the signs are there.
Yeah. So about a year ago, I did a little bit over a year ago. I said, the market is going to drop, and I kind of predicted what was going to happen because I saw all the signs. The market was overinflated. It was pretty hot early 2021, and then it really stayed hot until the summer of that year. And I saw the stimulus checks. I saw all these things that they were doing to kind of stimulate the economy, and not even stimulate the economy. It wasn't about stimulating the economy. It was just about keeping people at home doing nothing. And but people, when they get free money, they treat it like free money, and they just buy the things that they love. And they had nothing else to buy. You couldn't go travel, you couldn't do anything, so they're putting all this money into comics. And so I could see that was going to end. The governments can only print so much money before it becomes totally worthless. And that's what we see now, the ramifications of that. So what we see is a market where it was overly hyped. It was brought up by, just people with extra money. And then now it's like people are in a situation where that money has been cut off. And now they actually have to earn money, but people are a little bit slow about getting back into the market. And then that's created this whole recessionary situation where what we need is for people to get back into work, start producing stuff, bring the prices of commodities down.
Yeah.
But what we have is governments that are really dumb. Like a little bit of a political rant here, but we have governments that don't understand recessions. And so typically a recession or inflation happens when you have too many people chasing too few goods. Okay.
Yeah.
Supply and demand.
Yeah.
And that can happen where, people have lots of money and then they're buying goods. But what we have is actually a fake situation where people don't actually necessarily have money. It's just that there's too few goods. And what we've done is governments are like, oh, what we have to do is raise interest rates. And what that does is actually, as a business person, I'm a business guy. Business owners, we're trying to get back into business. We're trying to get restarted. So what we need to get started again is cheap money.
Yeah, low interest rates.
Yeah, low interest rates. We need to get that so we can hire again. We can buy the stuff that we need to get to rebuild our businesses. And now the government is saying, oh, we're going to raise interest rates. Well, as a business owner, I can't do all those wonderful things that I need to do in order to, hire more and do all these kind of things. So what ends up happening is I cut back on my business. Yeah. And that only creates even more. They're actually creating the situation that they're trying to solve. So I see things getting worse because the government is involved. Whenever a government is involved, it's going to be bad. If you want more poverty, you get the government to fight poverty. It's like, and this all comes back to comics. What has happened is, people are the first thing that you cut, whenever you cut any spending, either in a business or in life, is your luxuries. That's the first thing you cut. And comics, what's going to happen is people are going to cut them. And I don't think it's going to be where there's going to be this massive sell-off, because people still love the comics. But if the recession is prolonged, like if it goes a little bit longer where people are short of money, they will sell their comics. They will kind of use them as a way to kind of, cover their debts or get the cash that they need for food. Because, it's nice to have comics, but it's nice to eat once in a while too. So it's so I see that happening. So if it's a prolonged recession, which I see 1 to 2 years is probably realistic, then what's going to happen is we're going to have, like, in that time period, we're going to have a further drop in the prices of comics. And so that's what I see. I mean, that's my crystal ball version of it.
Well, there's definitely been some, the market was overheated, with no doubt.
Yeah.
Last year it was an overheated market. Even if forget the world economy, that was bound to correct itself. Mm-hmm. Any understanding of stock market, you knew that wasn't sustainable. Yeah. So there was bound to be a correction, and that it was, so far, I think we've only had a correction. If you look at, if you take some comics, Hulk 181, Fantastic 452, they were X and they've gone to 3X. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they've come back to 2.5X.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I've seen. It's not a really hard correction.
No,
they still have room to go down.
Yeah. And even one or two of them have actually bounced back a bit. So, yeah. So what I've seen so far is for me, it's more of a market correction to the overheated market we had last year. Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. A recession yet in the comic market. I think all we're seeing at the moment is a correction to that overheated market. I've seen nothing that's gone back to X.
Yeah, no. What I've seen is, like, you see these lines like this spike, yeah, and then it came down just a little bit, yeah, and it's still like. Yeah, it's still like there.
It can have hurt somebody, if you went out and you paid, if you bought a Hulk 181 for 169.8 for, 100,000, and now it's 125. You've spent 15,000 you didn't need to spend.
Yeah.
But most people had spent, 50,000 on their Hulk 9.8, and they're still sitting on 2X or 2.5X. Mm-hmm. So it's for me, what we've seen so far is just a correction.
Now, yeah, I that's what I've seen, and that's why I would say, if it's prolonged, then we'll see it more come back down. I actually do believe, though, that what we're seeing is a little different. So even though we see some books kind of dropping, I think what people are going to do is they're going to pick their battles. So what you'll have is like the books that are just pure spec, pure I don't even know who this character is, but it's hot. Those books will will hit a really hard reality. But there will be books that are either rare or considered blue chip books that people will use as leverage against the recession.
Yeah.
And I think they'll kind of cling to those books as something almost like when grandma would hide money under the mattress. I see certain books as having that kind of capacity where people will be like, okay, I'll save my Fantastic Four #1, but I will get rid of my 20 copies of X-Men #1 from the 90s. I think that'll happen.
I'll get rid of those Magneto covers. Yeah.
Those Magneto covers. Yeah, maybe this is a good time to sell. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I and if you look back historically at previous recession, the last one in, 10, 12 years ago, comics didn't really suffer. You will find some people arguing that historically the comic market has been recession proof.
Yeah, and I agree with them.
It's a bit like gold. It's a bit like it's a non-cash asset.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, it can actually protect you against a recession. So, yeah, I think if it's a prolonged recession, you're right, some people will be forced into selling in order to generate cash to support themselves. But I think that only really happens if we get into a 2 to 3 year recession. I think what we're seeing at the moment is a market correction to the overheated market we had last year. And I only think we're going to be, if I see some blue chip comics getting back to X, then yes, but we're miles away from that at the moment.
Yeah, we have a bit of a cushion.
Yeah, I mean, there are some comics that have dropped a lot, but they're like the ones you're describing. You showed one last week, the G.I. Joe one that dropped.
Yeah.
I showed one that had gone from $1,000 back to $300, which was Sweet Tooth #1. And, those type of comics based on hype and based on spec, I think they're the ones that potentially will go down. I think if you're heavily invested in Action Comics #1 or Detective Comics 27, you're fine.
Yeah, I think you'll be okay.
Don't sell.
Yeah, don't sell it this time.
You only lose money if you sell it. Yeah.
You
haven't lost money if you've got an Action Comics #1 and it's gone down from 2.1 million to 1.8 million. Just don't sell it, because it will come back to 2.1 million. You've only got a loss if you sold it. So this is not a time to sell your comics.
Yeah. So I actually see like a couple kind of weird things happening. So one of the things that it's kind of surprising for me to say this, but I actually see the hot lists as being great opportunities. So if you actually have to sell your books, sell your hot books now. So what I think is going to happen is, and I noticed this way back in the day when back in 2008, there was a kind of a recession.
Yeah, there was, yeah.
The housing recession and stuff like that. What I saw was people, what they do is they think, okay, how can I make money fast? And so what happens is the hot books, people will go, oh, those are the hot books. Maybe I can make money really fast. So they'll buy those books thinking that they can flip them later and make money. Okay. So what I would recommend is that make money later is probably not going to happen, because what'll happen is once normally when people would say, oh, this is the best time to sell, maybe like the trailer drops or the show comes out, and that's normally when people sell their books, right? What'll happen is there'll be a flood of those books hit the market, and it will kill those prices pretty quick. What I would actually recommend is instead of selling then, you have to sell when it's on the hot list. So if it hits the hot list, that's the time to sell.
Yeah.
It's a little bit earlier than before. Before
Yeah.
you'd have to sell at the whenever the trailer comes out or the TV series.
So I've seen that happening as well. If you look at Thor: Love and Thunder, the hot books for that have not peaked at the same time as historically they would peak. They peaked,
Yeah,
early,
early.
actually gone off
Yep.
earlier. Um,
Yeah,
so the cycle is earlier, and
it's shifted. It's shifted a little bit.
yeah,
And
you're absolutely right. The time to sell is the first time you see it on the hot list.
on hot list.
First time you see it on Comic Tom's list, sell it.
So, because you can buy it back later once the show comes out, and it'll be cheaper. It's funny. So I've been noticing these. I'm a pattern recognition kind of guy, so that would be the pattern that I saw, and I think it's one that people can really capitalize on. That if you, I think there's a lot of people that are like me that have these big collections. You don't have to have every book on the hot list. You just have to have a few that you can sell. And this would, whenever it hits that hot list, that's the time to sell. I'm not a seller personally, but it's one of those things that you should look for.
Okay, so I think we should probably run to part 2 of this.
Okay.
On my channel. So
I'll wrap up then.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone. We obviously we still have a lot more to say about this topic. I'd love to hear people's feedback below. Are we in a recession? Do you think comics are gonna die? Tell me in the comments below. But if you want to hear more of us discussing the recession and maybe what you can do and some victories that you can get, well, go to Mark's channel, because we're going to continue the conversation over there and we're going to give you some more insights. So I hope you watch part 2 on Mark's channel. Bye for now.